This week, we'll finish our look at the Enneagram as a tool we can use to help us grow in our relationship with Jesus and help us better understand and find compassion for each other. As we said the last 2 weeks, there are a few disclaimers that everyone needs to know and remember anytime we talk about the Enneagram. First, only you can determine your type. No one else can determine that for you, and you should resist the urge to type someone else unless they specifically ask for your input. Number 2, don't begin the process of discovering your type if you're unwilling to face up to the not great parts of your personality and are willing to grow from it. Number 3, never use the Enneagram as an excuse to justify your bad habits or behaviors. And last, number 4, Christ can help us live out the best version of ourselves. So here are those 9 Enneagram types again. Number 1, the moral perfectionist. 2's, the supportive advisor. Enneagram 3, the successful achiever. 4, the romantic individualist. 5, the investigative thinker. 6's are the loyal guardians. 7, the entertaining optimist. 8, the protective challenger. And 9, the peaceful mediator. We break these numbers down into groups of 3 called triads. We've covered the gut triad and the heart triad, and this week we will round out the circle to look at the head triad with Enneagrams 5, 6, and 7. We call this particular triad the head triad because each of these 3 numbers primarily filters their world by thinking it through first. And all 3 numbers struggle emotionally with fear. 5's core fear is being invaded, ignorant, or having their energy depleted. They relate to their fear by rationing their energy in order to take care of themselves. 6's core fear is fear itself, being without support or guidance. They externalize their fear by constantly preparing for anything that might go wrong. 7's core fear is being trapped in emotional pain or missing out on something fun. They deal with their fear by running away from their thoughts, as they are often likely to inspire negative emotions. Now, all of us experience fear regardless of our number. So, by learning about how to process our fear in a healthy way, we can all grow in the way we relate to the world. Well, I would love to get our discussion started, but before we do, I would love to just know your name and which Enneagram number you are representing today. Ben.
Yeah, so hi, my name is Ben, and I am an Enneagram Type 7.
Nice.
Hi, I'm Lisa, and I'm an Enneagram Type 5.
And I'm Amy, which makes me a 6.
Awesome. Well, thanks for spending time with us today. How do you use your head to interact with the world? Ben, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. So for me as a 7, you summed it up really well. It's I like to run away from things, especially things that are negative, or even things like boredom. Like boredom is one that I just can't stand. And so a lot of times I'll think my way through, like, what's my next step, or I'll daydream or think about the next adventure, or even just kind of imagine what I wish life could be like. And so I love to think about like positivity, and, it's always kind of interpreted itself in my life as optimism. And so there's good things with that and bad things with that.
Sure. Thanks for sharing. Mm-hmm. Lisa?
Yeah. So as a 5, the way I interact with the world is I love to learn new things. I love to apply what I learn. And when it comes to problems specifically, I don't really worry. What I tend to do when there's an issue or a problem or a crisis is immediately try to think through how are we going to fix this instead of sitting in it, which can actually cause me to be frustrated with people that need to do that. But that tends to be how I interact using my head, is that's how I just approach good things, bad things, all the things.
We talked a little bit earlier about how I bet you are wonderful in a crisis. Very calm and just let's move forward. Let's figure it out.
Right.
Amy, how about you?
I am definitely the worrier. I have a plan for everything, and then a backup plan, and then a backup to that plan. Definitely in my job, it's very effective in planning events. And so having 27 different plans, we're thinking through the ways that things could go wrong. And I have other coworkers that don't think that way at all. But that is just the way my brain normally functions, is to think like, what is the worst case scenario? Because I always want to be prepared. One of my greatest fears is to like feel incompetent. And so always wanting to know what I can know and be ready for anything.
Nice. Could you tell us a little bit about, as a 5, 6, or 7, how do you see yourself processing fear? Do we want to continue with you, Amy?
Oh boy. Sometimes it can be very overwhelming. I struggle with anxiety relating to like the fear of the people in my life getting hurt or dying. That is my anxiety that I have. So when every bad case scenario runs through my brain, it just kind of becomes paralyzing at times. Those are times where I've learned to have to like sit in it for a moment with God and play worst case scenario. And as a believer, even the worst case scenario ends with me seeing my family in heaven. And so it's definitely really painful because it feels like you're living through that emotion of losing someone. But then it is a reminder constantly that because I believe in Jesus, that I will see my family again because they are also believers. And so that definitely helps me process during that time of fear. But it can be super overwhelming at times when those fears just don't leave.
I believe 6s are also typically very empathetic. And I
Yes.
imagine that a lot of times your
Yes.
empathy for others and what might happen to them also manifests in
Yes.
fear for others as well.
Yes. Yeah. Or just feeling that like that sponge. And when I'm in the room and someone else is feeling uncomfortable, then I feel uncomfortable as well. And so it's difficult for me to try and separate that out and not take in more fear or more anxiety than what I'm already working with.
Lisa, how about you? How do you see yourself processing fear?
Again, by thinking through it. Typically the things that create fear in me are situations or circumstances where I don't have all the information, or I don't know what all the possible, like if it's a medical situation, what caused it, why did this happen, how can we fix this, and I process my fear through, again, trying to figure out how to fix the situation, and that tends to be where my fears come from, is if it's something that is beyond my control.
I think that makes total sense for a 5. Ben, how about you?
Yeah, so in typical 7 fashion, I want to avoid a lot of the things that cause me fear, which honestly is very detrimental in a lot of ways. And so it leads to especially procrastination. And so if there's something that I'm dreading doing, or I know that it's going to be a hard conversation, or it's going to be a difficult task, and I'm like, I don't have to do it right this second, I won't do it, which a lot of times causes all of that fear to accumulate because I don't allow myself to experience it in that moment. I'm just going to push it off down the road. And so rather than feeling fear a lot over time and actually allowing myself to experience it as it actually comes up, it kind of explodes out in the moments of like, oh my gosh, I have to do something, or, there's something that I have to handle that I'm afraid of. And now on top of the fact that it was a difficult situation to begin with, I've also added in this layer of I've avoided this for so long. And the situation hasn't gotten better, it's just gotten worse. And so now there's even more opportunities for bad outcomes or those kinds of things. And so a lot of the time when I'm experiencing fear, it just comes out like all at once. And so in those moments, my end goal is to get through the fear as quick as possible so that I can get back to a state where I'm not worried or afraid anymore. And so it's moments of I don't do things, I don't process things that make me afraid, and then I get to a spot where I get really good at going really fast through a situation that causes me fear, and that makes it really easy to be good on the spot. But for a lot of things, especially when it comes to relating to people or dealing with other people, there's a lot of times that can have a lot of negative outcomes and make me seem like I'm disinterested or disconnected because I'm not giving my full attention to a situation.
It's interesting hearing the three of you talk. So in week 1, we were with the Gut Triad, and their main emotion that we talked about was anger. And we talked about how one number externalized it, which is what I feel like I'm hearing from you. So I think it was the 8s. Their anger was very external, and I feel like your fear just in the some of those physical life circumstances is what I'm hearing from you. Ben, the 9s just almost even completely avoid anger or even pretend that it's not even there. So it's interesting to hear that similarity. Yep. And again, I believe it was the 1s very much internalized that. And I hear that. So it's just interesting how just the similarities, but just different emotions between the gut and the head as well. So we just talked a little bit about this with the Head Triad, but each of the numbers in this triad interacts primarily with fear, and each one has a different fear that motivates them. In the end, we all interact with fear. We all have fears of some kind. It's part of our natural reaction to the things that can cause us harm. Fear keeps us from doing things that are dangerous and can cause us damage. But everyone, and especially the numbers in the Head Triad, takes that fear to a whole new level. The biggest fears we often experience are fears of not having enough, not being good enough, and not experiencing enough. And in these scenarios, there is good news. We don't have to fear because Jesus provides all that we need. The truth is that when we fear, it shows a disconnection in our hearts between our needs and knowing that God provides us all that we will ever need. Philippians 4:19 says that God will supply us with every need in Jesus. We can know that regardless of whatever is making us fearful, Jesus will care for us and maybe not give us exactly what we want, but will provide what we need, even if we don't see it as what we need. 1 John 4:18 also tells us that such love has no fear because perfect love expels all fear. If we are afraid, it is for fear of punishment, and this shows that we have not fully experienced his perfect love. If we wish to experience this life to its fullest, we have to first experience the perfect love that John talks about and allow that love from Jesus to chase away the fears from our lives, to keep us grounded in the message that Jesus will provide all that we need. So when you are afraid, instead of allowing yourself to run away with your thoughts that will spiral you into anxiety, find comfort in the fact that we don't have to fear because we have access to everything we need through the gift of Jesus. Well, I'd love to bring it back to discussion. So tell me a little bit about what reminders do you find in Christ that speaks to your deepest need in response to fear?
So for me as a 7, with my biggest fears coming from really just of wanting to avoid the pain of the world, I think a lot of my reminders come from the fact that those pains were not originally intended for this world. When God created us and God created the world, he created a place that was perfection where we didn't have to experience that. And the hope that we carry as followers of Christ is that in the end, Jesus will return and will make all things new, and he'll restore us to that state of we won't have to worry about anything. It talks about he will wipe every tear from our eye. And so for me to understand that my sufferings while here are temporary, Jesus will in the end ultimately take care of my greatest fear and provide a place where I won't have to be afraid of those negative experiences or emotions anymore.
Love that.
Yeah.
Lisa, how about you?
Yeah, so as I stated before, as a 5, my fears tend to generate from situations where I don't have all the information or I feel like they are out of my control in some way. And so one thing that has really gotten me through a lot of the crises that I've been through in my life is really hanging hard onto Jeremiah 29:11 and Isaiah 43, and just reminding myself constantly that even though I don't know what God's plan is, he has a plan, and I'm going to be okay. Like whatever situation I'm in, if it feels overwhelming or feels like I'm going to fall apart, I just immediately remind myself, God's got this, and I'm going to be okay.
I just want to take a deep breath.
Right.
That feels so good. Amy, how about you?
Yeah, as a 6, I think something that I think I mentioned earlier, I struggle with wanting to be competent in things and wanting to know how to do things and not look like a failure. And that was something that was kind of instilled in my household growing up. This not a lot of room for failure. But so something that I've been definitely working through in my time with God is the reminder that he's the only one that's perfect, and I'm not expected to be perfect. I'm never going to be perfect. So striving for it is only just chasing after the win. I'm never going to get there. But knowing that I don't have to be competent for him. I think that wanting to be good at things is because I want other people to be proud of me or to say I did a good job or look up to me in some way, but knowing that really the only person I should be concerned with is Christ. And he has given me everything I need. And so a lot of the other stuff in the world that I'm concerned with is just of the world. And it's not important.
You had mentioned a little bit earlier just your fear about the future. And I know for me, that's something I struggle with personally. Last week, I brought up the verse of Proverbs 31:25, which ends in, and she laughs without fear of the future. And that for me is what I need to rest in, because I too just concerned for my kids, or I don't know, just for family or friends or whatever. So I imagine that also resonates with you.
100%. It's just that wanting to know what's going on, wanting to be in the know, and so that's what's really hard. Struggling with control, and not having control over things, and letting go of that control.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Though fear can hinder us and make us sit in a cyclone of our own thoughts and feelings, Jesus' love for us allows us to find peace even during difficult times. So allow yourself to rest in that peace, knowing that Jesus can care for all of your needs. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I love discussing the Head Triad with all of you, and thanks again.